Laconia, the legend. Laconia in sight. We'll make it in Laconia. The king has made it right. He signed the grant. The company is heading for its shores. The province of Laconia, escaping all the wars. Laconia, Laconia, horizons shed thy name. Your lakes and mountains call us forth, your forests we will tame. The crystal hills are set of gold, perhaps some silver too. We'll dig those mines and melt it down and start again anew. Laconia, Laconia, your spirit is our gain. You'll give us hope and help us build a region for our pain. The Laconia story in New England finds its European origins in the New England Charter of 1620 to 1635. The extended Vaughan family is grateful for the privilege and opportunity to present these historical Laconia roots as given to Laconians throughout the centuries. Although this history is often presented as polite and nice, the often controversial and uncomfortable elements of Laconia are true to its character. The earliest known reference to Laconia comes to us from Greece and their southwest Laconia province of the same name. This home of Sparta also neighbors the province of Arcadia and Elis, known as the home of the ancient Olympics. To the north and east, the fabled Golden Fleece epitomizes these classic lands. The Greek historian Plutarch preserved many of these epic tales with attention to detail and life in a city-state. These lessons would pass to a 17th century generation eager to emulate and claim. This map appears on page 80 of Scudder's History of the United States. Used as a prominent school text following 1884, the letters of Laconia have been highlighted to emphasize regional context. In the Romantic languages, lac, L-A-C, means lake. On, O-N, is Middle and Early English for a pond. Ia is Latin for either country, area, or region. By definition, Laconia is the lake's region. Jeremy Belknap wrote the original 18th century history of New Hampshire, which describes Laconia's 17th century New England charter influence north and east of the Merrimack River. Along with the New Hampshire provincial papers, these overviews afford students and scholars the many connections to our 400-year Laconia saga. The colonial economy depended on international trade. American ships carried products such as lumber, tobacco, cotton, rice, and dried fish to Britain. In turn, Britain sent textiles, tools, arms, and manufactured goods back to America. Dozens of operative craft guilds competed for the ways and means of adventurous trade speculation during the 1620s and 1630s. The spirit, system, consideration, and direct approach focused on the gold and silver, located quite high on the list of items preferred by these guilds and investors. Laconia was established as a patent, an association, a company, and a province among 3 seacoast Piscataqua settlements and plantations along what would later become New Hampshire's Atlantic boundary. Soldiers of discovery and surveyors were enlisted to scope out Laconia's land grant. William Alexander is said to be a primary architect of the North Atlantic in American royalist design. As Secretary of Scotland and a prolific man of words, Alexander devised a settlement and trading scheme which ranged from Newfoundland to today's Long Island Sound, Shelter Island, and Connecticut River outlet. The other significant architect was Ferdinando Gorges, who served as captain of the port of Plymouth in County Devon, southwest Britain. During the years of the New England Charter, 1620 to 1635, Newfoundland was known as the Golden Fleece, New Scotland, or Nova Scotia, was named Arcadia. The seacoast in the vicinity yields a cove called Elis. From the Kennebec to Merrimack River outlets, the region of Laconia was thus tabbed accordingly. Alexander the Freemason from Edinburgh was very influential in the affairs of New England until his death in 1640. Among the earliest Laconia craft guilds organized at the Piscataqua were the fishmongers. As depicted in this sketch, the fishing factory included much skill beyond the nets. The Isle of Shoals and Panaway at today's Odeon's Point in Rye were the site of a familiar and similar significant Laconia fishing factory until the great colonial New England hurricane of 1635. These British craft guilds and joint stock ventures owed their New England and Laconia opportunity to a great adventurer, John Smith. This be Captain John Smith. At Jamestown, Virginia, he had demonstrated the possibility of establishing a permanent settlement in the wilderness. Today's New England coastline from Maine to Connecticut was known as North Virginia when Smith sailed to explore these lands. Prior to the New England Charter, which I have shared, John Smith's 1614 voyage opened the region for settlement. The corresponding maps drawn up from his travels were coordinated with Prince Charles, the future king. By 1618, Charles decreed these lands to be New England. The New England Charter of 1620 to 1635 confirms their labors. This drawing of Smith at Monhegan by Bert Poole reflects the mission and the later arrival at the Isle of Shoals to follow. The Isles and sanctuary hamlet of Gosport were to become an important piece of the ambitious Laconia puzzle. The words of Smith himself shed further light. In the month of April 1614, with 2 ships from London of a few merchants, I chanced to arrive in New England. Smith Isles, his name for the Isle of Shoals, are a heap together, none near them. And what sport doth yield a more pleasing content, and less hurt or charge, than angling with a hook and crossing the sweet air from isle to isle over the streams of a calm sea? I would rather live here than anywhere. In defense of the new settlement, he said, I may call them my children, for they have been my wife, my hawks, my hounds, my cards, my dice, and in total, my best content. He had pointed the way for others to follow. During these same years leading to the New England Charter of 1620, Shakespeare had written and received critical acclaim for a play called The Tempest, about a far-off mystical land across the sea. Although theater guilds and royalists of the time commanded the attention of the masses, the Puritans labored in quite a different and discerning fashion. William Shakespeare's entire folio wasn't released until 1623, but it's clear thereafter that the thrill and fervor of new lands and maps created a large wave of interest. The author Lyman Rutledge writes of flavored maple-tasting fish, dried on wooden flakes or maple planks from the Laconia fish factory. These salted varieties were known to have been much in demand at the London food markets. During the 1620s, a fish tax was implemented, but ignored by the Shoalers. Parliament and the commoners denounced these expanding royalist monopolies, bringing lawsuit against the crown. The king dissolved Parliament, sending the leaders to the Tower, all touched off by nameless Laconia shoal fishermen who ignored the king's tax. The primary figure in specific Laconia matters to emerge at this time was John Mason of the Laconia Company. Having previously served as governor of Newfoundland, Mason was named captain of the port of Portsmouth at County Hampshire, England. Mason would also eventually become Vice Admiral of New England and paymaster for the entire English Navy. He also owned a small hotel and pub at Portsmouth in Hampshire called the Spotted Dog. While Mason hosted the Duke of Buckingham, a true Laconia proponent, at this hotel in 1628, the Duke was assassinated by a fanatic with a sword. Buckingham Palace was constructed in the Duke's honor. These are portraits of King James I of Great Britain and his Queen, Anne of Denmark. King James granted to the Plymouth Council of New England all of the land between the 40th and 48th parallels from sea to sea. In 1622, the same council granted to Sir Ferdinando Gorges and Captain John Mason the province of Maine, containing all of the land between the Merrimack and Kennebec rivers. A curious fact supported by the New Hampshire provincial papers indicates that until 1862, the August 10, 1622 document was known as the Grant of Laconia. During the American Civil War, Laconia information was conveniently adapted, lacking New Hampshire influence. In 1862, a gathering of Maine and Massachusetts historians, educators, politicians, and the military took place at Popham Beach in Maine. This infamous Popham celebration summarily changed the name of the 1622 document to the Grant of Maine. Again, the written record before 1862 refers to this as the Laconia Grant of 1622. Odion's Point. Here in the spring of 1623 was established New Hampshire's first settlement, Penaway Plantation. David Thompson and other hardy fishermen came from England to colonize and develop trade. They built a stone manor house, smithy, cooperage, fort, and stages for drying fish on nearby Flake Hill. Thompson's son John was the first child born in New Hampshire. 600 acres was allotted for ownership and a subsequent lease within the proper terms of indenture. The soil was good, and among the rocks on the harbor shore was a living spring of fresh water. Men and women settled and worked these lands with livestock imported and raised. The cemetery is all that remains today, but the Laconia Company had their roots implanted. The Grant of Laconia, signed on November 17, 1629, reaffirms the 1622 grant, today heralded by the state of Maine. Laconia was now proclaimed a province within this 1629 grant, and years of increased development began. Aside from two different kings, the signatories of the two grants remained identical, except for one gentleman from the legal craft. Pillsbury states the design of the Laconia adventurers was to seize upon and engross to their own profit the rich peltry traffic of a vast region of 60 to 90 miles inland to the Great Lake. It wasn't until much later in the 17th century that these explorers realized that Lake Champlain, discovered by way of St. Lawrence River to the north, was not the Lake Winnipesaukee of today's Laconia, and that the Merrimack River flowed from the north and east, not emanating from a northwest passage. The two men seen around the map of New Hampshire are supposedly Mason and Gorges. These map-room provincial Laconians agreed to split their holdings along the Piscataqua and Salmon Falls River. John Mason's county, or baronite, was called New Hampshire after the captain's port of authority in Hampshire, England. King Charles I and Queen Henrietta Maria, portraits by Anthony van Dyck in 1632. Until 1629, the new king had spent a significant amount of time dealing with Spanish and French wars, economic hardship with his people, and infighting with Scottish, Welsh, and Irish folks. King Charles decided to intervene on the New England Council and his earlier grand agrarian and utopian plan with John Smith. The Puritans were given a unique charter south of the Merrimack River to be named the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Laconia would remain intact to the north and east of the river. Laconia adventurers and soldiers of discovery expended a great deal of time and money in quest of an easy way from the Piscataqua to their coveted El Dorado of beaver and otter skins. Be it understood that until 1635, a series of incremental improvements and settlement expansion was realized. Now see before ye an overview of some of the earliest Laconia settlements. To the left we view the Isle of Shoals, Penaway of Rye, New Hampshire, Strawberry Bank at Portsmouth Harbor, and Newachawannock, spanning from Rollinsford across the Salmon Falls River to South Berwick, Maine. The colored bird's eye reveals early Strawberry Bank and the original Mason House located on today's Portsmouth Prescott Park and Marcy Street Harbor Way. The Panaway Manor sketch by Matthew Thompson indicates what very well might have been the look of the Panaway Fort at Little Harbor. Another fort at Great Island, Newcastle, was also begun at this time. Some of the earliest ships used to transport the skilled Laconia craft were the Jonathan, the Bark Warwick, and the Pied Cow. One of the Laconia Piscataway inventories passed down to us indicates diversity of consideration. Arms and ammunition, stores, provisions, cattle, fishing trade for religious use, fowling pieces, pistols, recorders, iron pots, squid lines, oatmeal, cows, bulls, steers, horses, shallops, boats, a Bible, 12 service books, a communion cup and cover of silver, 2 fine tablecloths, and 2 napkins. In 1899, the colonial dames of New Hampshire established a monument to the first New Hampshire settlers on a bluff overlooking the ocean. It continues to be maintained by the colonial dames. Historian Charles Brewster, writing in the early 1800s, said Odion's Point should be respected as our Plymouth Rock. Here landed in the spring of 1623 the first band of Englishmen, pioneers in the planting of New Hampshire, consecrating this soil to the service of God and liberty, 1623 to 1899. Beyond Flake Hill lies a well-filled cemetery, which holds all that remains of the first settlers of Laconia. Within this ancient acre, we do faithfully recognize the daring men and women who, amid the dangers and privations of wilderness, have here at last taken up their rest. We show you the Hamilton House from today's South Berwick, Maine, again, just across the Salmon Falls River from Rollinsford, New Hampshire. This house is located on the original Palisade Mansion footprint of what was to be another John Mason home and country manor at the Newachawannock settlement. The original water well is maintained and to the rear. This location also marked the deepest and furthest inland river penetration of the region by ocean vessel, with a distance of 13 miles. This access to a virgin forest allowed many a wooden mast to be harvested for an English navy hungry for the raw materials required for their ships. The beach just down the lawn on the river, called Cow Cove, entertained much of the livestock brought to this province of Laconia and entered on the aforementioned Piscataway inventory. Jeremy Belknap, 1744 to 1798. American clergyman and historian, born in Boston and educated at Harvard College, founded the Massachusetts Historical Society, wrote History of New Hampshire, published in 3 volumes between 1784 and 1792. Belknap was named pastor of the Dover, New Hampshire Congregational Church just before, during and after the American Revolution. His understanding and grasp of the Laconia beginnings in New Hampshire entitled our county to use his name. His work connecting the earliest New Hampshire settlements with a 60-mile inland vision of a pristine lake country is unmatched 18th century fact. Some of the pertinent seals from the New England Charter origins include Massachusetts Bay Colony to the left, with a drawing of an interesting figure with bow and arrow uttering, "Please come over and help us." Next, we see the seal of the New England Council Charter, contingent from 1620 to 1635, who authorized the Laconia grants. Observe the words gens in cognita mihi, Latin for noted greetings, and serviette, which translates to Danish napkin. The humans to either side carry a large book and a square and compass. The curious little unclothed man at the top wields a pitchfork as he rides a kind of seahorse. The gold and black seal used with the antiphonal is from the book New Hampshire as It Is by Edwin Charlton. The great New England hurricane of August 1635 destroyed most of Laconia's seacoast interests. Not unlike falling dominoes, a new vessel prepared for Fernando Gorges in which to travel to the New World suspiciously sank in the English Channel. The following November, the captain of Laconia interests, John Mason, died unexpectedly in London. His will, drawn up in the days before he passed, specifically addressed his holdings at Mason Hall in his county baronite of New Hampshire. With crops and structures ruined, a 6-year process dissolving the remaining Laconia Company and Association interests ensued. By 1641, the remaining Laconians agreed to a combination with the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Laconian surveyors had done their labor at Dover, Strawberry Bank, Exeter, and Hampton. The Laconians built their fort on Great Island at the strategic point thereon. Later, this fort at Newcastle would be called William and Mary, and finally, Constitution. Within 60 years, the Hubbard map appeared, illustrating what one might find venturing west and north from the coast. As we ascend the Merrimack River, notice the area that would become today's Laconia and Belknap County. The 90-degree turn into what becomes New Hampshire is obvious. A number of tributaries are indicated until the three-river meeting with the Pamachawasset and Winnipesaukee rivers at today's Franklin. Also, two small lakes take their cue from this short upriver map tour into Lake Winnipesaukee. Here's another perspective at about the same time from a Dutch map. Note the size of the huge lake yet to be explored. I believe this fictitiously shows a body of water extending from the Conway to Orford area in today's New Hampshire. Later development and the dam work would certainly alter New Hampshire geology and to accommodate the Industrial Revolution. In the 17th century, inland explorers would follow up the river, hoping to avoid snipers and arrows as they went. Indeed, with good fortune, Laconia headwaters would eventually appear. New Hampshire, as granted by authority of the English Crown to Captain John Mason in 1629, was bounded on the west and north by a curved line 60 miles distant from the sea. The course of this proprietary boundary, called the Masonian Curve, coincides with the nearby town line between Wilmot and Springfield. The bottom red line begins at Panaway, and you'll see extends to what we now know of as the Belknap Mall. The second circle up would be Strawberry Bank, and that line would extend to the Plant Peddler on Parade Road. And the third would be Nuwachawanek, extending just almost to Fun Spot on Route 3 in Laconia. Limits of the Masonian patent, again, are indicated with the red curve. The 60-mile inland boundary originally set would be the blue line, and triangulation outlets of Merrimack and Kennebec rivers to Mount Socorro are indicated by the yellow triangle. The challenging 38-year Massachusetts Bay Colony experiment was in place from 1641 to 1679. The inland version of what the Puritans proclaimed as the imaginary province of Laconia remained largely unexplored into the 18th century. Masonian land grants from Laconia, grants that found themselves in legal limbo, with Great Britain fighting a civil war during much of this time. Before he died, John Mason had arranged that his holdings be dispensed to the Mason family in perpetuity. The new king, Charles II, would insist that these matters be revived and revisited when he reigned during the 1660s and 1670s. Grants of the soil were to merit righteous possession. We'll speak of this in future programming. In 1638, the Massachusetts Bay Colony sent a survey team to find the northern bound of the colony. They reached a point said to be a couple of miles upriver from the Three River Junction discussed at today's Franklin, New Hampshire. Tree markings were left, but further travel abandoned. In August 1652, a team of surveyors ventured north to determine the headwaters of the Merrimack River. A line 3 miles north of that would bound the northern limit of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Endicott Rock was discovered, and the rock was rediscovered in 1833 during the dredging of the Weir's Channel. This depiction of Paugus Bay looking south from the Weir's Channel is from the Winnipesaukee Lake Country Gleanings of 1923. Although a romanticized and semi-accurate version of what might have been, the earlier 3 to 5 foot waterfall before the dams came is not seen in this rendition. The campgrounds at Aqueducton in the Weirs were well documented as some of the finest inland waterways with stock of shad and or salmon. Indian tribes from throughout the Algonquin Nation found their way to this region to fish for generations. The Lakes region continues to deliver as a destination or home for human beings and or Laconians of all ages and types. We've taken away the highlight around the Laconia letters of this map. The Laconia Historical and Museum Society provides a challenge for those who lack the understanding of why Laconia is a unique historical regional cornerstone and landmark. We don't want it lost. As we enter our 5th century of New England recognition, and with the help of our friend Jeremy Belknap, we know the true story of our unique Lakes region will endure. The fundamental skills and tenets of craft guilds and an Indian nation need not be forgotten as we clamor for a better world. Laconia, New Hampshire's home of the New England Charter, 1620 to 1635. Laconia Grant, 1622. Province of Laconia, 1629. The Piscataqua to the Lakes. Laconia, Rediscovery, 400. This is Charles Vaughan. Good day.